What was in the 24 years you've been doing this, Jun? What was your emotional low point?
I've had a few. The first one was in 1999. We were on a company tour. Anthony Robbins was actually on tour with us. We did a 7-city tour throughout the United States, and on the last city, I was getting tired physically. We're traveling a lot, and I ended up having something called Bell's palsy. And I happened to be on the airplane going to New Jersey when it happened. And when I landed in New Jersey, I had something weird going on. So I took myself to emergency, and I got there. They told me I had Bell's palsy. And I didn't know what that was. I actually thought it was like cerebral palsy or something like that. And so I called our founder at the time, and he says, you know what, go straight home. Take a flight, go straight home, take care of yourself. And I did. When I got home, my doctor told me, hey, man, odds are you're probably not going to recover. It was not a good doctor.
Wow.
And so a week later, 2 weeks later, it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. And so I was actually writing my termination letter from the company. At the time, I was in the company for about 4 years. I was kind of embarrassed because I figured my strength is speaking, being in front of people. And I couldn't do that if I had half my face in paralysis.
Wow.
But 17 days later, something clicked and just started getting better. And I'm glad my termination letter never hit the mailbox. But that's the first time I realized it wasn't about selling life insurance anymore. It was about me building teams and making a difference. For the first 4 years, I was just teeing it up and just selling, writing policies like a career agent. But then that turned my career around. It really did. So talk about a low point in my life. That's what it did for me. I had another one after that. A year later, we had a daughter that passed away unexpectedly. Wow. We lived in my parents' house for the first 5 years, saved an extensive amount of money. Kind of embarrassing. I was a CEO, marketing director in the company, living with my parents, but I had sizable savings. I always heard savings is important, right? And so by the time I went to buy a house, I almost was able to buy cash in Southern California. And I went out there and we bought the house, closed escrow, and the day we were supposed to move in, my wife goes into labor and we find out that she was induced prematurely and our daughter passed away, at birth. And so it was another shock to me, just a year after what happened the first time in 99. And during that time, I realized at the time, it's not about me anymore. It's about me giving back. It's about my family giving back. And so I think I turned into a leader at that time. So the first one was a builder. The second one was a leader, meaning I wanted to go out there and help people take care of issues that will preempt issues that will happen somewhere down the road that you don't expect. Like I didn't expect that to happen to us. But when it happened to us, I'm glad I had hundreds of thousands of dollars saved up. I'm glad I was taken care of financially. That's what WFG did for me. So from that point forward, I wanted to make sure people were financially independent, that people got beyond themselves. They saved enough money. That was the biggest thing. And the third thing, probably the biggest reality for me was my parents. My dad came home one day in 2008 and says, hey son, I'm not feeling too well. Can you take me to the doctor? So we took him to the doctor, find out he had stage 4 multiple myeloma, bone cancer. And he goes, and the doctor said, Mr. Delacruz, you're not going to make it to the Thanksgiving table. And that was September of 2008. So wow. I'm like, you're telling me 2 months? And I go, Dad, are you ready to go? And he goes, no, I'm not ready to go yet. You have things I want to go do and accomplish. I said, what do you want to do? What are your dreams? And he says, I want to do this, this, and this. I said, well, let's do it then. And we did. And I think that's what kept my dad alive for the next 30 months. Wow. Because we did that. Went back to the Philippines, a family reunion, did all the things he wanted to go do. And then once we accomplished the third and last thing he wanted to accomplish, he passed away within 60 days of that. But in that 30 months, Steve, guess what? Man, I literally didn't work. I would say I didn't work. And during that time, I realized, man, that was a turning point in my business because WFG Opportunity works. Because of what I built the first, I think, 15 years prior to that, it prepared me for a time where I didn't work, yet my business kept growing. I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars in that time. I was able to take care of my dad, spend time with him. I had 4 kids. I had a mortgage, I had all that stuff going on. But the opportunity paid off, if you ask me. And so those were turning points in my career in terms of a builder, a leader, but most importantly, a family person, a person that runs a family that says, wow, if I had a job, Steve, I would have lost my job. Or if not sure. that, I wouldn't be able to go out there and take care of my dad. Because the reason why my dad survived the 30 months is because they put him on hospice right away. We didn't give him any of that medication. We went out there and did all the holistic stuff. We went out there, went to Canada, went to Europe, went to the Philippines, different places that took care of him. And even the doctor was like, "How's your dad still alive? He was stage 4. He was only given 2 months to live. He survived 30 months."
Right.
I'm sitting there going because we did not give him any of the Western medicine that was given to him. We went out there and did all the holistic stuff. Plus, more importantly, we had the money. So I learned one thing: when you're sick and you have money, you have a chance to survive. I also realized at the time, very, very simply, it's the opposite of what I just said. When you don't have money, your time is just it's limited, because everything we did at the time was a decision based on money. Like, okay, we can do this for your dad, spin his blood, but it'll cost $10,000. It'll cost $20,000. So those were the three biggest reality checks or defining moments in my career, if you ask me, both inside and outside. That's defined me. Someone asked me not too long ago, what drives you to keep working as hard as I do? Those three stories. Those are it. Something happening on a personal level, which is your health. We all know health is wealth. Secondly, when it comes to our family, especially our children, we'll do anything for our children because our families are priceless. And then when it comes to our parents, if we're still blessed to have them around, that till the day they pass away, you want to make sure they can rest in peace. I believe I did the best I could with my dad all the way to the end. I was with him every day, took him to the doctor as often as we could, spent time with the kids, watched wrestling with him every Monday and Friday at the time. Did all the little things we wanted to go do. And unfortunately, now my mom has dementia and Alzheimer's, but because of this business, we're able to financially afford, a care for her. And, that's a big deal too. So those are the things that matter to me. Those are my defining moments in my career. And again, that's what's gotten me to work 23 plus years. But I'm a lifer. I'm not going anywhere. One thing about this business is, someone asked me a question, goes, Junior, do you have a chance to become a billionaire? I'm like, if I really wanted to make money first, I wouldn't be in WFG. Because I get it. There are people out there that are billionaires. And I don't know if I have a chance to become a billionaire in WFG, but I'm beyond the money already. I came from nothing, when I first started. I have more than what I need today. I've become a multimillionaire because of this company. I love to travel. I like cars as well too. So I do all the things I get to go do. I can sleep at night. I got a sizable investment portfolio. So what's neat about it is that, this business has afforded me all I wanted and I'm able to give back. We do a lot of nonprofit stuff, both here in the United States as well as abroad. And so to me, it's like, I think I have more than my fair share in this world because of this opportunity. But if you look at defining moments, those were the three that really shaped who I am today.
Just to go back for a second, when you were struggling, especially with your dad, and you wanted to spend the 30 months with him and do the things he wanted to do, did you find that WFG was a support structure for you, or can you talk about that a little bit?
Man, I'll tell you, WFG is so incredible. My best friends in this world come from WFG. It's funny. I have relatives. We all have relatives, and as much as they're blood to me, there's not very much conversation I can have with them because although we're related by blood, our mindsets are totally different. Our outlooks are totally different. There are people that I'm in business with that although they're not my blood, they're more family to me than my own blood itself. And what's crazy about it is the commonalities, how we think. But I'll tell you, during the time that I was going through those tough times, all three times, but my dad specifically, it was the outreach of the leadership and the friends that I built over the years up to that point that made all the difference. The phone calls they made, because something about a WFG person, because we're all about self-improvement and reading books and making a difference, there's a mindset that's attached to it too as well. Like that's why I tell people, there's two parts of WFG. There's a WFG that are proven leaders, 10 plus years, 20 plus years. Spend time with them. Because like anywhere else you go, if you talk to a person that's a rookie that just joined WFG yesterday or last month or last year, they're not proven yet. So of course they could be raw, they could be saying the wrong things. But I think the difference here was the people in WFG was my supporting cast. Support group. I didn't know my dad was going to survive 30 months. I kept thinking it was just the next month or the next month. But I think he lived longer because every time WFG agents would come by, instead of feeling sorry for him, we celebrated life versus talking about him dying. I think that was a difference. Do what you can. Spend as much time as you can doing the things you want to do. And I think that was a difference in the culture of our businesses. The people that are in WFG in business with me, like Penny Oy and John Tham and all some of the ones that you talked about earlier, we've become great friends, not just in the business, but outside the business. And so whenever I feel weak, like when I had my medical challenges or my dad's challenge or my daughter's challenge, the ones who uplifted me were my friends in WFG. And they're the ones you can lean on because they're a pillar of strength, both mentally as well as physically too as well. So it's been the biggest difference. That's why if you ask me as far as WFG, I'll go to bat for WFG no matter what. I don't care whose team you're on, but I'll defend this company because I'm one of the success stories of this company. It gave me an opportunity years back to put WFG put myself into an opportunity like WFG, put their jersey on, and they gave me an opportunity to be somebody, and I took it. And here I am 23 plus years later. So whenever someone goes out there and says, WFG this or WFG that, I'll take the time out to have a conversation with them. And 9 times out of 10, I'll walk out of that conversation changing or reshaping their mentality. Because again, most of the time when people go out there and pass judgment, it's an uneducated or uninformed decision they make.
Okay. How about if you had to start over from the beginning? It's 24 years, now we're going back 24 years, you had to start over. What would you do differently in your business?
Huge question. I call them the big three. The first one is I would field train more leaders directly longer. I field trained for a good 4 or 5 years of my career.
Can you tell the people what field training is exactly?
So let's say, for example, I were to bring you in the business, okay? If I bring you in the business, I would take you out in the field. I did that for the first 4 or 5 years of my career. So of course, everybody that came into contact with me worth my time, I'll field train you, right? Because there's an old saying that says 1 hour in the field is worth 10 hours in the classroom. So you learn more in the field than in the classroom, right? In the office. So I would take you in the field. Well, I did that for 4 or 5 years. I started developing a good sized team. And by that time, you're no longer not allowed, you should no longer be field training. You spend more time building the team than it is doing one-on-one, because your teams are now in the dozens or hundreds now. And so I stopped doing that about 4 or 5 years into my career. I should have kept doing that for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, even till right now. And so over the last 23 years, I did it for the first 5 and went in and out of that, I guess you could say, zone or state every few years. Like I go field train every 3 or 4 years. I'm doing that right now. I'm in the state of doing that. So if I had a chance to do it all over again, I would field train a lot more people. Here's why. The people that I field train directly have a better chance of succeeding because they're duplicating themselves from a good original. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so they have a higher chance for success. That's the first thing. The second thing, I would have thought bigger, to be honest with you. I didn't think big enough. When I first came in the business, it was back in '95, and making $100,000 was a lot of money back in the days.
Sure.
And I think at the time when I first came in, there was only $1 million earner in the entire company. And so my goal was to make a 7-figure income. First 6-figure, then 7-figure. Well, I've since done that. But I look back and say, man, I was thinking way too small. And so if I could have done something different, would have been thinking bigger. That's what it would have been. And to do that, I should have been associating myself with people that were more successful. I spent a lot of time trying to help people with the wrong kind of mindset versus going out there and being the lead dog or leader to go out there and just continue to set the pace and let the right ones follow me and the wrong ones just fall to the wayside. So that goes over that turnover rate you talked about. And last but not least, I think the biggest thing is I think I would have taken care of myself in terms of being a much more well-rounded leader back then, meaning I didn't know if I was going to have a 5-year career here in the beginning or a 10-year or 20-year. If I were to make a decision right from the get-go that I'd be a lifer, I would have done a lot more things sooner in my career and taken this business more seriously.
I see.
Those are my big 3.
Okay. Well, what's been your greatest joy in the business?
Seriously? My greatest joy, Steve. Besides my family is always my greatest joy. But seeing the success stories come through WFG, both in my team and around us. I mean, meeting a person that, like me, came in with, puppy eyes in the window at a presentation, whether it's at a house or at an office, and seeing them go from day one to who they are today, and seeing that transformation. And I see a lot of people right now with that. They have their struggles in life, and a lot of them have that dream, but they don't know how to get there. And so when you come into WFG, as you're adapting to not only the dream, but you have this vehicle that you can go out there and get to where you want to go. And this vehicle, see them go from, like, let's say, an introvert to an extrovert, or see someone go from making $10,000 a year part-time to $100,000 or $250,000, and just being life-changing for them. It's a great accomplishment. So that's where the success is all about just seeing our team become more and more successful. Whether someone comes in as an immigrant and all of a sudden, years later they become married and have kids and, become successful. That's probably the best part about WFG that most people never talk about, is seeing how people come in, but most importantly, seeing how they come out. Most people only see the outcome, but they never saw how they came in. If they only saw the person coming in, it's almost unbelievable how they are, how they are coming out. But if you were to see how they were coming in, I think it would be a better story to tell. So I think if you ask me, when people are looking at WFG, if they can look at who they are today and dream about where they want to go, know that what WFG is just a vehicle to get you between where you are today and where you want to go. So if someone has a dream, Steve, they have a great shot at using WFG as the right vehicle. But if you don't have a dream and you come to WFG, sometimes this business doesn't make sense. That's why the old saying says, you provide the dream, we provide the vehicle. And so I had a dream when I first came in. Like a lot of people that come into my organization, they had a dream. They just didn't know how to get there. WFG is that vehicle to get you where you want to go. And so it makes it easier when you know where you want to go when you come in.
Sure. How about your favorite client story?
Oh, I got a lot of them, but I got one specific one. So I was running for a CEO marketing director promotion back in 1997. I was going to be the youngest CEO MD in the entire company by 4 or 5 years.
And that's a very high level.
Very high level in the company at the time. Actually, highest field level at the time in the company. And there's probably only 8 of them in the entire company at the time. And I was gunning for it. And I've only been in the company for less than 2 years. Wow. And my birthday was coming up. And my wife's saying, you're working way too hard. You got to go out there and take a break. We're going to have a little barbecue on your birthday. I'm like, okay, cool. What time's the birthday? What time's the barbecue? So about 12 or 1 o'clock. I said, okay. And I happened to take an appointment that was like 75 miles away. One of my new business partners say, I have someone up there. He's a doctor. I want you to meet with him. Of course, I'm running for a promotion, so it makes sense for me to go out there and meet high-end clients. So I drive 70 miles up to this appointment. I leave at about 6:30 in the morning. I get there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And when I knock on the door, the housekeeper opened up and I said, "Oh, I'm here to see, the doctor." And he goes, "Okay, let me run upstairs." He tells the doctor, and the doctor comes down and says, "Do I have an appointment with you?" And I'm like,
Oh no.
"Oh no, exactly." And I'm like, and he goes, "Well, since you're here anyway, he goes, how do we know each other? Since you're here anyway, why don't you come inside?" So we call the person that was supposed to be there, my trainee, doesn't show up for an hour. So they get there about 9 o'clock, and I'm feeling very embarrassed. I know I have to leave by about 11 o'clock, but in that hour between 8 and 9 before my trainee got there, I did everything WFG taught me to do. It's called FORM: family, occupation, recreation, and talk about a message. I was 23 or 24 at the time. He was 60 at the time. And we had the best conversation. Within an hour, he was telling me, "I wish I had a son like you." Wow. And I said, "I got this guy." I just felt it, right? So the trainee got there. Next thing you know, we're having lunch. He's opening up a bottle of wine, telling his kid, "Go get some steaks at the grocery store." Does not know it's my birthday. And so afterwards, he goes, "We'll deal with business afterwards." So in the afternoon, we started setting up accounts. He called his in-laws there and blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, we did quite a bit of business that day. The weird part is my wife is blowing up my beeper. This is beeper back in the day. And I'm not replying back to her until about 5 o'clock. She goes, "What's going on? You got friends over here?" I'm like, "Babe, I got all this going on. It's a career day for me. Just I'll be back when I get it back." And he opens up and orders more steak and lobster and shrimp for dinner. And he goes, "Stay here." So I stay there all the way till 11 o'clock at night. And it's my birthday.
Wow.
And right before I leave, I go, "I need to go." He goes, "Why?" I go, "Because it's my birthday today." He didn't know that till the end of the day. And so I finally get home. It was close to midnight. Of course, everybody came and went kind of thing. But it was probably the neatest birthday / appointment I've ever had, because in one given day, not only did I get business partners that became senior marketing directors in my business, but I developed a friendship for life. So that's probably one of my neatest presentations.
That's a great story.
I've had some funny ones though in between. But that was probably the best one.
I'll bet, yeah.
That was probably the best one, just because of the timing when it happened and how it happened and how, you just never know. The harder you work, the luckier you get. I understood that day. That day I understood that.
Sure. How would you describe WFG's unique culture?
Let me tell you, it's family. It's a big family. We joke around. You have to come and see a convention to believe it. I've heard people say, "Oh, we've had a convention at your arena. We've had concerts there too as well." I said, until you see WFG, you will not understand what a convention is all about. You know that, Steve, because you've been doing it yourself.
Sure.
Especially if you come from the financial services arena, it's no way. It's a combination between a concert and the NBA Finals kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And everything in between. But people just love the business. The culture of it, first of all, it's first love. Everybody loves the business. It's a big reunion for us. So whenever we get back together at these big conventions, it's a homecoming for everybody. Because, for 364 days a year, we're fighting the fight, going after and helping consumers as much as we can. And so when you go out there and get to a big convention like Las Vegas, like we have every single year, it feels good to be around other people that are crusading and helping families out there, to get together and celebrate all the wins that we've had this past year. So the culture is amazing. Whether you're in Southern California or in Georgia or you're in Canada, the culture of WFG, when you walk into an office or you walk into a successful office where there's a CEO or EVC or field chairman, something like that, in that office that represents that location, there's a culture and, more importantly, a rapport that comes with it. And the credibility between one leader to another is huge. I mean, the best analogy I can give you is kind of like the NBA. NBA has all these great teams, and inside great teams have great leaders. We're no different in the business. We have great teams and great leaders, and your reputation is what builds you in this business. And I think the neat part about it is you need to see it to believe it. One thing is we joke around about blood in, blood out kind of thing. That's kind of how it is, because my team is called Crusader Nation. We're very proud of it. My last name is Delacruz, and one lady years ago called me, "Hey, you should be called the Crusader." And then so a bunch of people were calling themselves Crusaders, and she goes, "Yeah, but you have the right to be the real Crusader because your last name is Delacruz." So hence my name, the Real Crusader, and then we created Crusader Nation. And so there's a pride behind it. There's a pride behind who we are, what we do. That it's not just about selling a product. The least thing about me, Steve, is about selling the product. To me, it's about selling the dream, the opportunity, gaining a friend, somebody you can be in business with. Because I learned one thing. I mean, if I'm going to sell products, then you get competitive with someone. And when you can get competitive with someone, one will win and one will lose. Well, I've also learned that if I can recruit you into the business, if I can sell you the dream, recruit you, guess what? You're on the same team with me. And if you're on the same team with me, guess what? It doesn't matter if you're a better salesperson or I'm a better salesperson, you're still going to buy. But the difference is if you buy from me or buy from you, we're on the same team. So I'd rather recruit you than sell you. That's really what it comes down to. And so our culture of our business is very unique. The industry hates us. They do. And the reason why they hate us is because we're that good. You know, a lot of times they say, oh, you guys are uneducated. You guys are like a cult, or you guys run like a multi-level. Until you sit down, you could have said that maybe 10, 20 years ago, but today we attract the best business leaders out there. In fact, we attract a lot of people from the industry as well that are not just about selling. They're about crusading. Someone asked me this not too long ago, says, what would be the difference if you were 23 years somewhere else? I said, okay, I'll give you an example. I have a friend that's a career agent at another company, been there for 23 years. Him versus me, he sold 1,100 policies in 23 years. The last time I checked, I'm in the hundreds of thousands of policies. So I've made a bigger difference than he has in his company.
Because of your team,
the team, collectively. Exactly. So it's team over me versus it was him versus the industry. And I said, no matter how hard you work, you are not going to outwork, hundreds of licensed people, which is what I have.
Sure.
And so that was a difference. And the difference is you're also never going to be as strong as you are 10, 20 years down the road. And so one day when that day comes, you're going to realize, wait a minute, I'm 40, 50 years old. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be as competitive as that young 20-year-old coming out of college that's a better salesperson than you. So what's going to happen then? What are you going to do then? And that's what I had the foresight to see 20 plus years ago. So now that I'm 20 plus years in the business, I'm no longer actively selling as much, but I'm spending more time coaching and building and leading teams, which is probably the strength of who I am today. Makes sense? And that's the dream. That's where you want to be because, you look at, let's say, sports again. You go to, let's say, the NBA. There was a lot of great Hall of Fame players that were not good coaches afterwards. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and many of those, right? Even Michael Jordan.
Sure.
But there was a lot of average or maybe a little above average players, but they weren't Hall of Fame type of players, but they become incredible coaches, such as Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, and many others out there. So to me, the great part about WFG is you don't have to be a great salesperson here. You could be an average salesperson, but become a great builder here. Or if you want to be a great salesperson, you could do that too as well. But the long-term career here is to be a great builder. And what a great builder really is the ability to teach what you've already learned to your people. And so it's not about you, it's about your team. And so it goes back to that question you asked me earlier, what's the greatest joy here? Literally is seeing people win in my team. That's really the greatest joy. I mean, nothing makes me happier than seeing someone that makes, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000 a month, and they have kids, they have bills, they have stress and everything else, and they come into a business like WFG and they can make $5,000 or $10,000 a month, or something just to change your life. I had a lady not too long ago stare at a check that she got for the very first time, and I said, are you okay? And she started to cry. She goes, June, I've never had one check this size ever in my entire life. And I'm sitting there going, you're college educated, you're this and that, why? And she goes, I just never have. Because she's always been a person that's very studious, but never understood the difference between being book smart versus being street smart. And she goes, here in WFG, you learn to become street smart, street wise. And you learn to be a doer versus just a person that thinks they can do. Because in the world of education, for the most part, it's always about the higher level of education where I'm smarter than you. Well, it's true. But just because you're smarter doesn't mean you're actually going to become more successful anymore. That era has changed quite a bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite rags to riches story in WFG?
And there's so many. I would tell you right now, Raja Dhaliwal probably is the highlight that we've been talking about. And I've gotten to know him. I knew him when he first started.
Great guy.
A great guy.
Yeah.
And not even great. If there's a word that's even better than great, then I put him there too. Because if you meet his wife and meet his kids, I've met him at many different stages of his career. And the money has never changed him. It really hasn't. I think he's probably one of the best unsung heroes of today. The believability, where he comes from, where he's at, and more importantly, where he's going. And this guy's just getting started. He's an example of, to me, I guess you could say it's Canada, so it's not the American success story, but the North American success story. The other one, if you ask me, is my all-time favorite, is Penny Oy. Penny Oy she's incredible. Her and Ben, I've known them since literally their first year in the business. When I first came in, about a month in, I saw her at a meeting. I saw her with the same mole like me. I realized if she has a mole, I have a mole, we can do something good. I shook her hand. I waited after a meeting. I said, hi, my name is Jun Delacruz. I want to be your friend. That's exactly what I said to her. And she looked at me like, I'm married, right? I'm like, no, I'm not that kind of friend. It was kind of a joke. And what's funny? The last 23 plus years, we've become the best of friends. We've traveled the world together. We've seen our kids go through, from childhood up to where they are today. We've gone through happiness and sad times together. But the most important thing is we keep each other going. And so it's just neat to see a lot of these rags to riches stories where they had nothing. Now they have everything. But guess what? Having everything doesn't mean anything to them in terms of money. What everything was to them was making a difference in people's lives. And to me, being surrounded by people like that has made me a better person as well. Because to me, a lot of times because I'm from Southern California, it seems to be like money and material things are very important. And as much as they're a part of your life here and there, I've learned that it's not important. What's important are relationships you have and the friendships and our health and our family and everything that really matters. And to me, 23 plus years in the business, I'm just getting started, Steve. And I'm 46 years old. God willing, I'll be here 20, 30, 40 more years just crusading and making this thing bigger than it ever has been. So I think the real success story in WFG is WFG itself. That's really the rags to riches story, because if you knew how our company started, the history of it with Hubert Humphrey and even the practice company that he came from and the whole WMA story and et cetera, if you go backwards, it's a story that's worth talking about. And if you take the time to talk about it and learn about it, you'd be prideful to know who we are today, but you'd be excited about where we're going. It's kind of like you meet a person that's successful today and you ask them, hey, you always been American? No, I was an immigrant. Whether it's legal or illegal, then you hear that story of where they came from. It's pretty humbling. And to see where they're going, it's pretty exciting. And so that's what, to me, is probably the biggest success story I see is Raja, Penny, but as a whole, WFG. Because WFG, I tell you, it's crazy. There is no limit to the success stories that are out there today. We're growing in every state throughout North America. We're the biggest thing, if you ask me, since sliced bread in our industry. And the cool part about it is that the company keeps raising its roof. A lot of times people think that a company like this has been around for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years now, that there's a new company that's going to come up and challenge us. And there's been a bunch that have tried. But the one thing you can't compete with are the levels of leadership. Think about that. You got guys like Rich Dawley and Monty and Swan and Ed and Jack Leonard. These guys have been around for 30 plus years, maybe even some, I think, maybe touching 40 soon, plus years. So you have those experienced people. Then you have the people like the Penny Oys and the Andy Wins and those guys that have been around for, let's say, 20 to 30 years, right? Then you have myself and guys that are my era, at our level. And then you have the ones that just joined like Raja in the last 10 plus years, right? Then you got all these new bucks that come out too as well that are just, hitting fire. So you have layer over layer over layer over layer. And that's unheard of in our industry. A lot of companies out there are very young, 3-5 years, but they're too soon to find out what their destiny is going to be, right? Sure. Then there's some older companies out there, but you can tell they're no longer relevant anymore. They keep preaching an old concept. They have the same old leadership running the show, and there's no new players. Here, there's layers over layers of layers, and that's what makes our business so unique. The divisions we have, the dynamics we have. We're not a one-trick pony. We're not a one-company pony as well, too. So the dynamics of who WFG is and what makes it really unique is the fact that it just keeps growing and growing and growing.
What do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of WFG?
Just what you said earlier, the culture right away, and people think right away, is this a network marketing company? Is it multi-level? Is it a pyramid? I always tell people, don't let your ignorance get in the way of your family's future. Because the reality is if you get educated about those 3 things or 4 things, and you find out the truth, and you understand it, man, I'll tell you, that can make the difference between who you are today and who you really want to become. Because I was one of those guys. I was surrounded by a bunch of friends that would tell me, man, it's a scam, stay away, do this and that. And then someone told me, goes, hey, do your friends pay your bills? And I go, no. He goes, then why should they make your decisions? Go see for it yourself. And so I did. I saw with my own eyes. I heard with my own ears. I talked with the people. I smelled them. I hugged them. And you know what? It felt good the first time. So after that first meeting, I had the second one, that third one. I went field training, like I told you. And here we are 23 plus years later. I love it more and more. And I feel like, you open me up. I am WFG. I'm one of those guys that am WFG because I've seen this company go through its ups and downs. I've seen it fight through the tough times. And during the great times, we celebrate. But the neat part about it is we never change our focus, which is really helping the consumer and looking for that new person that wants to build a business. It's always about the new person, which is really neat here. It's always about helping the consumer at the end of the day. So we're really a company of destiny, if you want to say.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the prospect that might be watching this right now? And again, they're on the fence, they're not sure, they're anxious about this because they've never heard of WFG before, and all of a sudden they're very excited, but they're nervous as well. Any last thoughts for that person?
Yeah, I do. I think that the first thing people have to go do is you got to take the time out to really look at the opportunity. And I don't mean just 1 day or 1 hour, or I don't mean just Googling it or go on the internet. Take the time out to go to the office and spend time with the leaders that are there, whether it's for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour or 2. But take the time, because I think most people will make a lifelong decision in 10 minutes or 20 minutes or one presentation. It doesn't make any sense to me. How can you go out there and judge a company of this size, this stature, the kind of leaders that people's made a difference on a 1 hour conversation? It doesn't make sense. To me, if you're a person that does that, you're going to end up being like a lot of people that I come across. I just saw someone at the airport today that says, hey, I was with WFG before. Don't you remember me? I'm like, no. He goes, well, I got in there before you. I'm like, well, how long did you last? A few months, and I quit. And I go, you quit? Why? And then he tells me why. And then he goes, I go, well, what have you done since? He goes, I've done like 20 different deals. And right there, I already knew. When he says I've done 20 different deals, that means he jumped from one to another. So he's not a lifer. He wasn't looking for something that was legit. He was looking for something that's always better, which is, again, goes back to the world we live in today. This world of social media today, people are always looking for a quicker way to make a quicker buck. Here, if you want to go out there and make a difference in your life, change yourself, evolve, make a difference in others' life, and really go out there and show your relevance, take the time out to find out what WFG is all about. Take the time out to really go out there and find out the truth about what we can do. Because I could tell you, I think there's a lot of people that take a misstep in WFG. WFG, from what I understand, 1/3 of all the AMAs today, 1/3, that means everybody that joins the business, they're recodes. Recodes meaning they were in WFG before. That means that they saw this business opportunity at one time when it was a small deal or whatever the case was, or maybe they weren't serious at the time, but they kept their eye on it and they watched it over the years. Kind of like that Ford commercial. Have you seen this lately? And everything we used to talk about, all of a sudden you're turning on the TV and you're seeing Transamerica on television, on golf, or on NASCAR, or whatever the case is, or you see all of our companies that we represent, Nationwide and Pacific Life. And so you can't question that anymore, can you? You can't question it at all. So what ends up happening is there are people out there that maybe not the first time they're interested, Steve, but they come back that second and third. I always just tell people, as long as you circle back through, because I have friends myself that have come back after 20 years because now they're ready. Back then they were 20 years old, single, having fun. Now they're 40, kind of beat up, married, whatever the case is, and so they're ready now. And the cool thing about WFG is, we're a long-term type of company, so we're going to be here for hundreds of years, ideally, right? And so if that's going to be the case, then the opportunity is always going to be here. It's obviously, though, if you can go out there and take the time out to come in earlier, sooner, you can obviously have more time to benefit from, all the success you can have here.
Jun, I appreciate you coming in. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks
Steve.
very
Appreciate
much.
it. Thanks for the opportunity.
For Jun Delacruz, I'm Steve Siebold. Thank you for watching.